I'll dim the lights for a second. Yes. Right. Oh wow. Good morning. Trying to set the mood here. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Kedar. Helping NRF with this whole AI for Science initiative. Thanks, Saif, for your leadership in bringing this amazing crew together. It's a pleasure to see many familiar faces here. And I think we just wanted to start off. And thanks for those who are online. Hopefully you can hear me. I've been practicing my booming voice since the morning. If you can't hear us, please write something. We'll move out of the way. Okay, so essentially what we are working towards is an AI for Science Grand Challenge. Maybe some of you have heard about this already. This is a new program that NRF is looking at starting off. We have already taken a website, aiforscience.sg, and we are updating all of the workshops that are happening in various different themes in this space. Right, so please take a look, and we're working towards AI for Science and Nobel Turing Conference. This is an old slide, sorry, that's updated. At the end of July, so it's going to be on the 23rd and the 24th of July. So if you go to the website, you'll see that. So what is the idea behind AI for Science? This is actually Professor Hiroaki Kitano's slide. Any of you remember RoboCup? Yeah, some of you do. Yeah, my age. You're telling me my age, right? But basically, the idea was that you can have a soccer team that's robots that can beat a human Olympic level team or a World Cup winning, right? And the vision is to get that by 2050. So he's got these amazing, crazy ideas. He's the CEO of Sony AI, okay, and he also is the head of the Systems Biology Institute in Japan. So he started this Nobel Turing Challenge. So I attended that along with Xunyuan in February. That's the 4th workshop. And the idea is that there'll be an AI system that wins the Nobel Prize without noticing it's an AI system, not a human scientist. So that's really transformative, right? If you think about the vision of this. The idea is that you do the Turing test at Nobel quality scientific activity. So we're not really going after this exactly. What we want to do is define AI for Science very carefully. So on the website, we have a scoping report that we wrote, with contributions from many of you, thank you. And that describes where does AI for Science fall, right? So AI for Science is a general effort to utilize and extend AI technology for solving scientific problems towards scientific discovery, right? So essentially, it should be driven by domain experts, but you want to bring in the AI experts to work with you closely to solve these problems. This is different from science of AI, research of AI, or foundational AI, which is basically, development of AI technology by themselves, right? So different architectures, GANs, VAEs, stuff that we use, development of those and the foundations behind them, they're not application specific. So we're not looking for that. There's an AISG for that, right? So you can actually go and apply for funding over there. AI for X is the implementation of AI to solve practical problems in different domains. So many of us are doing this anyway, but we're not looking for just implementation of things which are downstream. Okay. The way this whole challenge is being scoped from NRF is both top down and bottom up. Of course, there are areas of national interest that will be considered. Some of the workshops are in that space, but there's definitely some from bottom up as well, right? So physics and complexity science, we had a workshop on that, and that was definitely driven bottom up. So it's a combination of those two. There are two key things that please during today's discussions pay attention to, which is data and computational resourcing. So as a part of the AI challenge ask, what we will definitely do is write up what is required, what data is available, or what data can you generate that can use the latest AI technology to solve these scientific problems, right? So let's work backwards from this timeline. We are here somewhere in April at this point, end of April. NRF is hoping to have the grand challenge call for proposals in August or September. Okay, we're going to have the AI for Science NTCI conference on the 23rd and 24th of July here in Singapore. Myself and Professor Zhang Yang, who's actually hosting the same one on AI finance over at NRF today at the same time. We're going to write the full foundational research capability study report. So this is actually a public document that will be disseminated to all the ministries, all academics, industry, as well as overseas. So it's basically what does AI for Science in Singapore mean? Right? So we really need your help in the discussion today, and we'll channel that through Saif to capture all of that. So the output from the thematic workshop today would be a 3 to 5 page white paper, right, which Saif will lead. So please work with him very closely on this. And then we will integrate that information draw out the whole landscape in terms of what AI for science in Singapore means. Hopefully that's clear for you. Remember, these white paper is not really a white paper for a proposal yet, right? Hopefully today you have a chance to interact with everybody, get to know everyone, and then later on when the grand challenge comes, hopefully you can define those grand challenges, etc., and form your own team. So that will come probably a little bit later, right? NRF is also visiting various places to get an idea of AI for science from different locations. So, next slide, stop moving, please. So here, that's pointing the right way. Okay, so these are the workshops. Please go to this website. We are an amazing team here. Beatrice, Andre, and a couple of other people, and other Raymond and Eleanor are actually helping update the website on more or less on a daily basis, so things get updated. So please check it out. We'll also have this whole meeting recorded, and at some point we'll put up the whole recording online too, so you can come and see it, get information. We'll see if some of you want to share the slides online. So it's going to be an online platform for you to share all the information and a resource that you can access. Okay. So what is the outcome today, right? So really what we want you to do is think big, right? What is a vision statement? Define the problem statements and set targets for potential AI for science area, right? But please keep that definition in mind. We're not looking for how do you improve manufacturing by 5 times faster, right? Science has already done this, right? So we need to do something where it's much more transformative. Things that are not available cannot be done. So the key word is transformative, right? What is the grand challenge that you need to solve, and how can AI and data help you to do that, right? So the rest of them are basically sub problems. So understand the challenges, define how the Singapore research community can best address these problems. Where do you get the data from, and describe the data, complexity and large, right? I think there are various challenges in different sectors. So each sector has its own challenge. So please talk about them. And essentially the bottom line is vision, data, benchmarks, and digital twin, right? So if you're able to define it very carefully and say, what are the benchmarks for the data sets that, the AI folks are actually going to be excited about, right? So if you look at the schedule, again, this is old, the AI methods for science is happening on the 20th of May. Sorry, I haven't updated the slide, right? But 20th of May is when all of the workshop leads will represent your domains and talk to the AISG folks and have a discussion about what can be done in that space as well. So please do think about this. Basically, the idea is transformative ideas. What are the data sets and HPC resources, CPUs, GPUs needed? So please do that during your discussions today, right? Here's an example. This is my last slide. Sorry for taking up so much time, but where do we see AI for science, right? So many people ask me, is this TRL 0, TRL 5? It's not, right? Applied research itself can be TRL 1 all the way to 8, right? Many of you know this better than I do. But the idea here is that foundation AI research is basically basic AI research that's already being funded in Singapore. Where we sit here is that marriage or handshake between the AI algorithms, data, and your problem statement that can then help you along translation, right? So we think that there's a gap in that space. Here's an example for material science, right? So foundation models that exist, VAEs are an example of this, but they will not work for materials. So if you do property directive generative design of materials, this is just an illustration, then you can see that you have to tune them in certain ways to respect symmetry to structures, etc. And that gives you models that work very well for materials discovery. And then you can pass them on to do designs for particular material space, right? Like CO2 conversion, etc. So that's really what we want you to build, is this sort of full story end to end if possible. And where do you plug in for AI science, right? So that's really, please think about this for your domain, and hopefully we'll have many, many examples as part of all of the work. So I'll stop with that and pass it over to our boss.
Thank you, boss. Thanks, Kedar. So it's really a pleasure to welcome all of you here. I'm Saif Khan. I'm at NUS Chemical Engineering, and I'm very happy to see so many friends over here. We have an amazing sort of program of talks, etc. So let's just go to the slide, and then I can basically in the next 10 minutes orient you in addition to what Kedar has done, and really talk about what we seek to achieve in today's workshop. Also to contextualize the workshop in the framework of the other workshops happening, right? So we'll be discussing some motivations, some drivers. So first of all, right, who's here? And we have actually, it's an amazing collection of people. We've got folks from academia, right? Public bodies, we've got industry here, represented small and medium enterprises. collection of expertise in chemical and biological manufacturing, right? That spans end to end, everything that you may need, right from synthetic chemistry, biochemistry, biotechnology, right through to reactor and process systems engineering, and then all the flavors of AI, machine learning, data science, optimization, etc. So we do have a competitive advantage in general. Kedar spoke about, study trips abroad. In Singapore itself, in just a small land area, right, we have this amazing connectivity and concentration, basic science, translational research, industry, and academic R&D, right, policy making. So let's make use of that competitive advantage. And we also have an amazing manufacturing hub in this city, right? Manufacturing is a big part of our economy. And so it is all the more important to convene this workshop to complement the other workshops that are happening in this domain. So let me just maybe switch slides. This is, yeah, no worries. Just next slide. So as far as what we are planning to do today, right? All of you are organized into 5 tables and a table X. Okay, so we have table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 5 tables are basically topical, but please feel free during the discussion section to hop tables, right? So the sequence of tables is biologics manufacturing, chemical and biochemical manufacturing, chemical and materials manufacturing, process systems engineering, optimization, and control, as well as modeling, simulation, and design. These are all the elements that we would put together in manufacturing typically, right? And we have a roster of amazing speakers, which I'm very much looking forward to hear, which cover all these topics. And as you can see, our speakers come from different institutes. Ian's coming from A-Star BTI, Hwee will talk from ISC Square, Valerio, SIT, Jill is from NUS, Xunyuan, NTU, and Andrew from A-Star again. And we'll hear essentially sparking sort of thematic talks, which will then hopefully incite discussion along the lines of what Kedar suggested. So we'll talk about the brainstorming session a little later, but that's the overall theme. Now let's contextualize this workshop, right? So before I know it's, next slide, please. Let's try. Yeah, this is dubious.
Sorry, no, it's my laptop.
No worries. It's a few slides, so. Yeah, thanks. So I know this is an audience that kind of knows what I'm about to say, but let's just bring ourselves to the same sort of starting point, right? We're talking about chemical and biological manufacture. And as such, when we talk about manufacturing, we're talking inherently about multi-scale and multi-physics process systems, right? So on this slide, right, this is beautiful version of a plot that exists in many different places, but it's really showing you the scales that we are dealing with, both in terms of length scales and time scales, right? So if we start, and this is just one reactor, if you start, let's take a catalytic reactor, it could be heterogeneous catalysis for chemistry, but it could equally well be something for biochemical manufacturing. But the catalytic reactor scale, right, if you work downwards, right, we are talking about phenomena that span in scale from basic kinetics at the level of wave functions in molecules through to nanoscale phenomena on the surfaces of catalysts, which involve the material science and of nanoparticles in catalyst form. We're talking about a very important scale for manufacturing, which is the transport level scale, mass transport, heat transport, diffusive phenomena, etc., at the catalyst pellet scale. And then we're talking about reactor scale phenomena, which would involve fluid mechanics, interacting with the transport phenomena, interacting with the chemistry. So inherently, when we say manufacturing, we're dealing with multi-scale, multi-physics processes. And that's really important for us to sort of start from. Now, of course, that's just one process unit. Typically, process systems for manufacturing are sequences of units strung together in some sort of a process flow diagram. I've just put one example. Everybody is familiar with this example, arguably one of the most famous processes of our time, the Haber-Bosch process, right? And that's got reactors, separators, etc., strung together. So again, we're talking about process systems that need to come together to do viable manufacturing. And not to forget, for those folks, especially at table 1, dealing with cells and cellular phenomena. The cell itself is tremendously complex, right? So we're talking about the cell itself as a system undergoing networks of hundreds of reactions, which you need to actually control with some fidelity to be able to accomplish what you need to accomplish. in addition to all these other multi-scale phenomena. So that's where we start off from in manufacturing, right? And then, next slide, please. So let's start with just the landscape for this workshop. Now, Kedar mentioned this beautiful AI for Science initiative, right? This initiative starts very basically from discovery, right? So there is a big ecosystem in Singapore that deals with molecular and materials discovery. And in this sort of exercise, the idea is to understand or develop relationships between structure and function. Next, please. That leads you, once you discover a functional molecule or a functional material, the question then arises, okay, so it performs the job you intended to do, how can you make it? In principle, right? In principle. So that's the question of synthesis, molecular material synthesis, which could be accomplished by a number of formal ways, route planning, retrosynthesis. Now, next tab. This domain involves a very significant, and it's been significantly accelerated by the availability of AI and ML methods. Especially, I mean, currently, let's take organic chemical synthesis. Very large data sets already exist and are being mined in very different ways to discover patterns for reactivity, etc. There is a big development of high-throughput experimentation tools that develop or generate the data that is needed to actually complement the AI methods that are being used. This is not the focus of this workshop. In fact, next tab, because this is actually a workshop that will be complementary to the workshop we're having today. And this workshop, I encourage everybody here to attend, because this is the AI for Material Science and Chemistry workshop on 8th May. And that Kedar will be leading along with Beatrice and a few other folk. And it's an amazing workshop that establishes the role of AI in the discovery and the synthesis side. Now, for us in this workshop, next tab, please, we're talking about process technology. So how do we, once you have identified, discovered new molecules, new materials, our job here is to understand what science we need to enable the scalable process technologies that will ultimately manufacture those new materials, new molecules, new therapies, etc. And often in manufacturing, we are performing multi-objective constrained optimization problems, right? Our process systems need to be scalable, definitely, sustainable, economical, robust, right? And the kind of requirements that we face when we design processes for manufacturing are complementary. We need to know a lot more things: thermophysical properties, thermochemical properties, kinetics, transport properties, and so on, and string them together into process unit operations that ultimately do the jobs. You can do it in radically new ways, or you can use existing technologies to do that. But this is the domain that we'll be playing with today. The questions we'll be playing with, the questions we'll be addressing are the grand challenges in this particular domain of scalable process technologies. Next slide, please. Now, before I even go to AI as such, right, it's worthwhile for us to just take note of, and I know we'll have speakers on this, but computation first, right? Because ultimately, computation underlies AI past few decades. On this slide, actually, somehow the images are a bit weird, but on the left, the first two images are actually the first molecular dynamics simulation done on mainframe computers in 1960 something. And the first CFD simulation, again done on mainframe computers in the 1960s to compute airflow around airplanes. Yeah. We've come a long way from there to today. We can compute with high fidelity ab initio quantum mechanical solutions to complicated many-body systems to understand catalysis in many interesting contexts. We can perform entire quantum mechanical molecular dynamics simulations together to look at entire virus capsids behaving in interesting ways. The CFD, for example, computational fluid dynamics, is routinely employed now in designing Formula One cars, or even thinking about entirely globe-scale climate models, right? So our ability to compute physical models and simulate them is just exponentiated, and that's actually the groundwork. On top of that, next slide, please. We come to the AI revolution, right? And let's say, no worries. And this is where we're playing today, right? The era of machine learning. Now, essentially, it builds on the era of computing, And the whole theme is accelerating discovery, scientific computation, and design. These are all things that we as manufacturing folk need to leverage, right? So just a couple of examples of the things that AI is doing, and you'll hear a lot more from our speakers. But really what we've started doing is our ability to leverage AI with big data has revolutionized the way we, for example, infer dynamical laws from data. And we can actually infer or distill physical understanding from data. That's now a very big field in machine learning and AI. We can use AI to dramatically boost computational simulation, such as computational fluid dynamics. And lastly, we have this amazing ability to now conduct generative design, which is bespoke design of process systems in ways that we could not imagine. So these are just some of the things that are coming together. Our ability to understand distill patterns and understand laws of dynamical systems, our ability to boost computation itself, leveraged by AI, and then also to be able to do generative design. Next slide. So that's the theme, right? At least one of the big themes is AI enables acceleration. And maybe we can explore today the acceleration in the context of scalable process technologies. What can we leverage AI to be able to do in fundamentally different ways for the manufacturing context? I have 3 examples. Next slide. Some of this acceleration is things that we are actually doing today, really thinking about, at least at the lab scale or at the pilot scale, how do we accelerate process development? How do we generate a lot of data, use that data to conduct optimization, for example, finding optimal conditions for chemistry, but at the same time, with that data, learning or inferring knowledge from that data by way of reaction mechanisms, by way of reactive landscapes, etc. Next slide. We're doing things like multi-objective optimization to be able to establish viable process routes towards new molecules or materials. This is ongoing efforts. Actually, these are some examples that Kedar, myself, and a bunch of other amazing interdisciplinary talented people are doing in Singapore today. Next slide, please. And in the context of process development, in Singapore, we have this amazing track record of working with industry to develop new technologies as well. So this is an example of process analytics technologies that use imaging-based methods combined with machine learning to learn physical properties rapidly. And physical properties are a big component of process development. Next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, so I'm just going to say some things, but I know all our speakers are going to say more things about grand challenges. So a lot of opportunities exist in this space. Now, I've put a thing here. As active molecules, this could be small molecules or biologics, become more complex. And as sustainability becomes more paramount, and synthetic methods become more adventurous, there now arise new grand challenges and new opportunities. And I think for us as a manufacturing audience, right, I think we can meditate on AI-enabled accelerated design of new process systems. So that's one thing, right? If we are going to discover new molecules and materials, can we really think about revolutionary ways in which we can use AI for science to accelerate the development of new process systems? This would mean maybe match the novel synthetic chemistry or biology that you're developing with, bespoke and scalable process systems that allow you to do agile and sustainable manufacturing in the Singapore context. And once again, the idea, can we have standardized high throughput experimentation platforms that actually generate the data that you need as well? That could be one. There are others. AI is not just, it's not revolutionizing what we could do in the future, but there is possibilities, and we can discuss that, about radical operation or optimization of existing processes. We have fundamentally new capabilities to be able to use multimodal data streams to operate existing manufacturing processes in radically new ways. These are just some of my thoughts. You'll hear many thoughts from the roster of speakers that are coming. And we'll talk about the next slide, which is the brainstorming session after we've had our speakers talk. So without further ado, I know it's already kind of a little bit over time. So let's start with this session on thematic talk. And it's a real pleasure to first welcome Ian Walsh from BTI, who's going to tell us about AI for biologics manufacturing. Ian, the floor is yours.
Just took a minute to sort this, and
yeah,
the video is off, so we'll disconnect. Give us a minute. For those who are online, should disconnect it.
It was my internet. Yeah, you can disconnect. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
So good morning, everybody. I'm looking forward to our discussions that we're going to have today. And hopefully I can introduce how in biomanufacturing we can use AI. Done again. Was working. Okay, yeah. So biomanufacturing of any therapeutic is very complex. And there's many distinct processes that you can see from this image, all the way from upstream to downstream to where you purify the final pharmaceutical. And what's vital throughout this process is that we have effective monitoring and control of each of the individual operations. And with this monitoring and control, what we ensure then is optimal quality of the therapeutic and an efficient manufacturing process where the drug can be released to market quickly. But another complication arises because every process is different. So it's heavily dependent on the system of production. For example, if you use CHO cells or whatever, or insect cells or whatever, and the product of interest, whether it be mRNA, nucleic acids, nucleic acids are mRNA, cell therapy, recombinant proteins. So the process changes depending on on the product of interest. And throughout the entire process, you have very labor-intensive analytics that are always done on very expensive instruments. So how do we see AI fitting into this process? I'll just give you some small examples. Not the list is not exhaustive. So in the process, we have a lot of mass spectrometry instruments, for example, and other very expensive instruments. So we can use AI for preventative maintenance of this expensive instrument, where a machine learning algorithm, for example, can be used to predict if the instrument is going to go down, so forecast if it's going to go down. And if it does go down, you get an alert to your smartphone. And also you can have online dashboards that show you the health of the individual components of the instrument. And second thing that we can do on the instrument level is we can use AI to take the analytical data from the instrument and predict what the omics will be or the analytics will be. So for example, here, glycosylation was predicted using an AI or machine learning system. And this is very labor intensive. Doing omics on mass spectrometry is very labor intensive. So if we can automate that, we will speed up the process considerably. Other models include bioreactor-based models, cell-based models. So for example, inside the bioreactor, we often have the cells that express the therapeutic. So how can we do metabolic modeling using these cell-based models? And even before we go into the manufacturing process, we can also use AI to choose what the best therapeutic is. So from a candidate of a pool of candidates, choose the best one to bring to manufacturing. And each arrow that we see here, there's lots of data being churned out. And we have to capitalize on that data that's being churned out using AI. In industry, they've already started to adopt AI. So this is two examples where GSK, Siemens, and Atos use a digital twin in their vaccine processes. And what they did is they hook the digital twin into the real world processes, and the sensors in the processes send information back to the digital twin, and then the digital twin simulates how to control for a healthy process. Another example is Sanofi and Dassault Systems also use a different type of digital twin where they can optimize the three-dimensional facility. So optimize the facility for efficient production. So 2 years ago, we published a paper on how to harness machine learning to do better quality by design. And we described that in a bioprocess, we can extract all of these critical process parameters, like from the cell culture media, there's a lot of parameters in there, like amino acids, vitamins, metabolites. And we can also use the physiochemical parameters. We can use those as input into a machine learning algorithm in an upstream bioprocess to predict the critical quality attributes like cell growth, productivity, and other critical quality attributes like the glycosylation level and aggregation. And we dived deep into those papers where we found out that the most popular modeling approach is to model titer, followed closely by the cell growth or viable cell density. But perhaps more interesting for today's talk is the kind of algorithms that these papers use to model. And by far the most common is very simple linear-based regression models like principal component analysis and partial least square regression. But as you can see, machine learning is much less used, but it is growing. And we do feel that as the bioprocessing data expands in the next few years, that machine learning will be used much more compared to these very simple models because it has the nonlinear capabilities. So let me go through some examples of what we did over at BTI. We in relation to
It's green, yeah. There's no on, but yeah, it's on.
Hold it, yeah.
Yeah, or put it in a pocket, it's fine.
So let me go through some examples of software that we use to automate quality checks in the process. So this is an example of glycosylation on antibodies. And this is very important for the function of antibodies because it's a regulatory requirement to screen for these glycans because certain epitopes on the glycans can cause anaphylaxis in patients. So what we have to previously we've done this using a manual approach, and that can take days to do. So if you have hundreds of samples, multiply that by days, you're into a very time-consuming, costly quality check. So what we did is we took the data and we transformed it. We compared it to the conventional approach, where it's very difficult to characterize the isomeric glycans, for example, and we transformed the data using an extra layer of ion mobility, and using that transformation, we were able to separate the isomers and then do pattern matching, where we could determine the glycosylation in seconds or hours compared to the days. And the second software that we did create was based on aggregation. So aggregation is where certain proteins are prone to clump together to form toxic aggregates. And what we did is develop an algorithm that looked at the sequence of the protein and find regions, amino acid regions that are prone to aggregate. And using this algorithm, then we can select from a pool of candidates the best sequence to bring to manufacture. In another example in the area of cell media optimization, we also created a machine learning algorithm where we extracted cell media variables from the cell culture. We extracted new ones. So traditionally, glucose and amino acids are used, but we extracted new variables like nucleotide sugars, sorry, and we placed them into a machine learning algorithm, and we found that it could predict galactosylation very well. So this is another quality of recombinant proteins that relates to solubility and half-life. So we showed that the machine learning algorithm using these new features could outperform the traditional approaches that use glucose and amino acids. On the right-hand side, we also created a metabolic flux model, where is a cell-based model where a metabolic flux map can characterize the intercellular molecular state of the CHO cell. So how healthy the CHO cell is. And we did an industry collaboration using this model, and we optimized the partner of our collaborators' media for improved yield, simply using this model. So how can we use these machine learning and mechanistic models in an actual media development process? Well, first, it's probably best to describe the traditional design of experiments approach, where a series of bioreactors are used, with each having a predefined media. And we also characterize the output variable, the product yield. And in the DOE, we can find the best set of media variables that correspond to the best product yield. And then we have to take samples from the bioreactors and show that the quality attributes are within a desirable range. If they're not in a desirable range, we have to repeat a cycle of DOE. And this can go up to 3 rounds, and it can take almost 5 months, which is very costly. So what we propose is to replace the DOE with our machine learning and mechanistic model to simply take input from the mass spectrometer, such as basic metabolites, amino acids, and vitamins. Changes in those then can be placed as input into the algorithms, which completely removes the need for a cycle of experiments, costly experiments, and we can do in silico experiments. So we can use the algorithms to do hundreds of thousands of dry labs experiments that correspond. We get the best simulated CQAs that correspond to the recommended media formulation, bring that to a bigger scale bioreactor, and then see if in our offline measurements, if the CQAs are within a desired range, and then continue to further scale. So this part here greatly speeds up the process of media optimization. So what are the open challenges in the AI biomanufacturing? Well, first of all, we believe that there is a lack of large, high-quality data sets out there. All the multinational companies do have these high-quality large data sets, but they keep them private. So perhaps in Singapore, what we can do is IHL and HR come together to create a large, high-quality data set, biomanufacturing data set that non-commercial and academic researchers can use. The second challenge is the integration of these data types. So at PTI, for example, we do have good integration of proteomics, transcriptomics, glycomics, and metabolomics for biologics. But there's much more work to be done in new modality areas like cell-based therapies and mRNA. So that's an open problem to develop these integrated omics data sets. And the holy grail of biomanufacturing is to develop this real-time monitoring and control loop, where from the bioreactor we extract various data from inline, at-line sensors, spectroscopy sensors like Raman, your usual mass spectrometry data, use all this data, pre-process it, place it into a hybrid model, which has mechanistic and machine learning, and use it to output how to control the bioreactor for robust and predictable product quality. So this is my last slide, and probably the hardest hurdle to overcome is how can we get industry to adopt AI, because industry has a lot of set in stone processes that they regularly file to the regulators, these processes that are set in stone. So what happens if we introduce AI? Will the regulators become more skeptical? Will it be harder to file? And is the process compliant? So you can create an AI system to increase your yield, but the regulators might ask, so you increase your yield, but what happens to the quality of your therapeutic? And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian. Getting us started with the biologics. And so next in line, we have Hwee Lim from ISC Square. And she's going to tell us a little bit about the next step, biochemical manufacturing. So it's transitioning from biologics towards chemicals. We'll get there. Hwee, the floor is yours. Thanks, Ian. We'll leave the questions for the discussion session so that we can get through the different topics and hopefully you get an overview. So,
Is it louder now online?
Oh,
Just trying to get the.
things mess up and I try to toggle them.
Let's say next slide. It's on as close to your mouth as possible. That's what you guys say. Okay, good.
Oh, that was just now.
Huh?
That was just now.
Just now,
Yeah, that
when I
was.
was speaking. Yeah.
No.
Maybe like come here. So-
Can you hear? Is it good now? We lost audio for a while. You can try.
Okay,
Oh.
so I can start. Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and also the participants online. Thank you very much. I think it's my honor to give a presentation in this workshop. I think all of you are also very much experts here. So I think I'd like to open the discussion here really with a perspective about why there's a need to further advance chemicals manufacturing. I mean, actually, we have done this for more than a century, right? So why do we need to then introduce even AI into this? Perhaps it's just really to give a perspective. I think unlike the biologics, which is really more complex, I think in chemical side of the house, we have been doing this for many years, and the world and this chemical industry, we live in the benefits of the advancements in the chemical industry over the last century. And this is really the landscape of the global chemical industry in 2017, and actually in 2023, and not much different, really. It's still a very important segment of the global GDP, and of course, the APAC region is very much growing as well. And so what is really then the need, the motivation behind it then is what you call transformation in the E&C sector. I also classify into three key trends in the chemical industries that really needs, that's really happening, and that's really urging the transformation of the chemical industry. And one is of course the climate crisis, under the rising notion that a lot of our actions are actually causing climate change. And there's also a lot of things that's worrying in the chemical industries and in companies. And that's really the geopolitical shift and decarbonization imperatives around. So these dual forces at play is really causing a lot of changes and actions from responses from customers. And the last really shift is also all of us here who are demanding more and more sustainable products that you want to use, and you want to play your part to really save the environment and also for our next future generations. So all these are actually, I think, the fundamental forces at play why there's a need to further look into chemical industry and its transformation. And if you look at it, what exactly is really happening? Like chemicals industries is actually the third most emissive industry in the world. In chemical production, they account 1/3 of the total carbon footprint. And the current chemicals value chain is pretty much fossil fuel based. As you see, it's very linear. It starts from crude oil, and you go into key base chemicals intermediates, and therefore go into the further specialty chemicals, etc., and other products that we use every day. Pretty much this value chain is very well done right now. I'll say over the last century has been very much optimized. And if you think about why AI needs to come in, right? There's almost no need to. Unlike it's really the forces at play, that there's a need to shift, and there's a need to perhaps embrace a new paradigm shift and a new world going forward. So where we are today, of course, is we are beneficiaries of the crude oil economy, and in the future, perhaps it's a combination of new industries embracing something like what's called modern bioeconomy. So in our lab in ED Square, in my lab here, we look into the nexus of chemistry and biotechnology innovations, and synergize it with really much modern digital tools, really to target some of the chemical problems that we face today in the E&C sectors in the area of chemicals and fuels. So we leverage not just our chemistry knowledge, but also our A-star chain connections, for example, and really look into tools, automation, and putting together this multidisciplinary team, not just within ED Square, but also leveraging a lot of expertise across different parts, different institutes of A-star, the IHPC, BII, RMCB, CFP, etc. So going forward, I would say that in the area of synthetic biology and chemical biotechnology, I think maybe I'll just give a definition kind of thing. What is really the differences and also in relation in chemicals. So synthetic biology is definitely a much broader definition. It's a multidisciplinary field that in essence involves engineering of organisms for a particular function. Ideally a new function, right? A function of choice. And with that, the organisms can really include biological parts, enzymes, systems, device. So it's multi-level. It's almost like the biologics case where you take a cell, you make it, you engineer it, you put in engineering principles and create a new function. It's very it's a very broad range and very preliminary. It has been shown to have impact in multi-industries, beyond chemical industries, of course. But in chemical biotechnology, I think what we really want to focus on is really the application of really synthetic biology, really for chemical synthesis only. And it's also the engineering of enzymes and cells and microbes, but really for chemical industries. So with this, right, I think in that case, I just want to highlight this quote here, a recent quote by a co-founder of DeepMind, that AI is probably helping this area to come of age. The quote basically says that the world will be then soon see a new wave defined by two key technologies. What we believe is AI and also the advancement in the area of ability to control organisms and really impart it with new abilities and new functions. So with that, right, I think I'd like to point it slightly maybe into context. What is really then the challenges if you merge these two thoughts and thinking with relevance to the chemicals manufacturing, is that chemicals manufacturing is undergoing transformation, and then remind ourselves that actually key trends that's actually at play here. We are looking for optimal processes then in the future. Going forward, taking into consideration some of these fundamentals, maybe the need to change feedstocks. They're sustainable, cheaper, and ideally better. So that's where we are, where we're going. And of course, even though there's a lot of technological and scientific possibilities today, and then a lot of folks are still working on this, the biotechnology route, I think, remains a very largely expensive endeavor with a lot of promise. I think biology, unlike molecules and physics, is a lot more complex and really harder to predict. For a long time, I think it's regarded as a black box. We still try to unpack this. I think it's still a little bit of a black box, I would say. And it's a multi-dimensional, I think, like what Ian was sharing. It's actually a multi-dimensional, multi-scale problem that is actually across the board, not just down to from discovery, even how fast we can find the best system to work with, and also then when you scale, there's a different challenge altogether. So it has been stated that, of course, AI can impact in every part of the way, right? Actually, starting from discovery, you find what you need to start with, you iterate and engineer and make it better. And then in the scale-up phase, I think it's very similar to challenges that we face in the biologics processing. I think it's very similar as well, in that there's a lot of a need to understand that the process is pretty much an engineering problem from then on. So I would say that next few slides, I think I'm just going to give a few examples of how people have been trying to advance this area, both locally as well as internationally. And a lot of folks, I would say in the world have been looking into things like how can we develop models to accelerate molecular piping? How can I make it faster? How can I do things that make it faster to really get to the process that I want, to get to the system that I want. And so this is a local example from NUS. And really it's about making use of automation, generating large data sets, creating feature correlations, machine learning approaches. So this is one type of approach. In the biocatalyst development phase, I think this is an example from Professor Arnold's lab. It's also about really automation generating curated data sets, huge data sets, and then applying multimodal type of approach to really understand this and then ask ourselves, how can we do this better in the future? So our contribution in this space, I think it's in the enzyme engineering space as well. I think I just use one slide to summarize what we have been doing. Of course, we have been building a high throughput experimentation platform and actually leveraging our expertise across different groups in ASTAR as well as other collaborators to really look into not just computational modeling, work combinatorial approaches, multimodal predictive work, which we are in the midst of trying to publish, and then also applying generative AI as well in development of some enzymes as well recently. So that's a lot of work that's ongoing, and in general, merging the idea of high throughput data, curated data generation with actually models to accelerate some of the developments. And this is just one example of how we took the enzyme, took the information that we have from the natural product library that we have through a mining process, applying automation to generate large data sets and then AI models to discover and then engineer new plastics. So in the area of, I think I'm just going to have only one or two slides on bioprocess development. And Ian, I think, has already shared a lot in this area, and it's very much, I would say, it's very similar when it comes out. The cells is different, the products are different, but in the end, the principles of which is actually quite similar. And the people talk about the need to develop integrated models, right? I think discrete models wise, I think more has been done. I think if you take one type of information, one type of model, one type of parameter, I think it's a lot easier, and some of which I think have been seen in the literature. It's a lot harder when you need to integrate everything. That is kind of different and quite hard to understand as well. That one system may not talk to the other as well. And so this is about also a recent publications by a group in DRI, and it's really about integrating them, looking at the system parameters. How can we integrate systems and then metabolic engineering with AI to really advance how can we do this better and finding the best model forward, finding the best solution forward. So I'd like to end off by also sharing how then biosynthetic biology actually merged with traditional chemical. I just want to highlight this work from Hwee here, that it's really also about synthesis, it's about harnessing the best of both chemistry and biology. I think that's a very important theme, I think, going forward. I think I'm not 100% advocate to say that biology is always the best, neither chemistry is always the best, but I think we can find an optimum eventually. And this is really an example of how you can integrate the advancements of biocatalysis to make precise chemistry of choice, harnessing insights that nature does very well, and then couple it with key advances and also very critical chemistry that has been developed by chemists over the decade. That actually today, I think in biology is actually irreplaceable as well. I think there are the aspects of which where biology and chemistry can complement. And really, I think this is also a highlight of an example. For example, then in this case here, then how do you find the best way forward? Which is the best way forward? And finding best path forward, I think this is an example of a recent work in MIT, and it's really to merge enzymatic and synthetic chemistry with computational planning. But is there a particular point when you say that actually you should just do this with a chemical approach? You should just do that with enzymatic approach. I think we are still trying to find the best path forward. as well. So our contribution in this area is for you to actually find the best path forward. One of the best ways is actually to generate a lot of data. So what we have done and leverage, and thanks to the work of Dylan and Hwee and ISPC, and that's really to expand the data sets to generative AI and really to accelerate discovery and really finding the best way forward. So I just wanted to end off by saying that it's definitely possible to use AI to enhance, I think, every step of the way, all the way to help manufacturing and finding the best processes, finding the best route forward. For the advancement definitely needed, I think we need to integrate across the developmental chain. I think that's hard. That's really the challenge going forward. I think AI will can play a big role here, and that's really a big potential going forward.
Thank you. So we've seen the chain of thought going from biologics to chemical and biological systems. Let's now move to chemical process systems. It's a pleasure to invite Valerio Isoni from SIT, who will be talking to us about chemical process development. Yeah, just very short as you are.
Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And today the theme will be on leveraging AI for advancements in chemical process development. Because of the theme, I couldn't resist the temptation to use my tireless AI assistant to generate something about AI. Okay, I think it did a pretty good job in capturing the elements about this. We can discuss over tea or coffee break whether this is like posting something on social media and smashing the like button to your own post, but that's a different story. Now, before going into how AI can help us to advance chemical process development, accelerate, help us to make better decisions, maybe we take a step back to understand a little bit what is chemical process development. Because I'm sure that a lot of you are unfamiliar with the concept. So what is process development, sometimes called scale-up? I could spend hours talking about this, but I decided to do it with one picture. This is not scale-up, okay? Thinking about that, we just use larger equipment, finger crossed, and they say when. This is not what scale-up is about, okay? It's a complex discipline that overlaps between chemistry and chemical engineering. But I love this cartoon. It's only 30 years old and it's still valid today. In a lot of people's heads, scale up is this, but it's not. All right. So what is process development? Okay, from an innovation point of view, it's the phase that is in between the discovery and the commercialization route. Okay. Is where you test your hypothesis to a large enough scale, and when most of your ideas die. That's why it's also called the valley of death. All right, it's a tough place to be playing, I have to say, but can also be exciting. From a technical point of view, if we look at complex molecules, the making of pharmaceuticals, for instance, we can loosely think about the R&D as three distinct phases: the discovery phase, the manufacturing phase, and the process development, which is typically looking at making kilograms, a couple of kilograms of products at the pilot scale to develop a proof of concept. And what goes in people's heads at that phase? Well, you take something from the discovery, you look at, can I use it as it is? Most likely not. Then you need to screen for alternatives. You need to see whether there are examples of being demonstrated of a sensible skill. You can see whether the experiments are being reproducible to a level you're comfortable with, whether there is existing know-how in-house, okay, to actually translate and move it forwards. We need to consider safety. Safety is paramount, okay? And we need to have a business case. No money, no talk, okay? And this is under a lot of pressure. In this space, especially to making specialty chemicals or pharmaceutical, every day that you can save, the day that you can monetize on your technology, that you can extend your patent, there's a lot of money at stake. All right. So, if I were to summarize a few points, the chemical process development looks at bringing new molecules to market in a systematic way, and it looks at process optimization, best conditioning chemical reactions, maximizing efficiency costs. We also look at ways to bring things from round bottom flask to pilot scale to industrial scales, looking at process control, equipment design, calorimetry. There are a lot of parameters involved. And of course, safety, mitigating, identifying potential hazards that are associated with charging, discharging, combining, storing chemicals, and so on. So we usually focus on 4 things as scientists: reaction, workup, isolation, purification. But the process is really more than that. Okay, we have a lot of things that needs to be considered, and these all contribute to our final decision on what process should have and should consider. We also need to be aware that we need to make a lot of steps before we go from on the journey going from lab to commercial scale. And at each stage gate, right? Can you imagine this in the process development process? All right, we need to make decision to go to the next step, go no go, based on the available information that we have at that point of time. So we can see that at the beginning we have very limited information, and we need to have a judgment call to move to the next step. At pilot scale, we have a bit more information, but again, we don't have a clear picture. You see where I'm going, right? You need to be quick getting to market. You don't have a full picture. You need to commit to some decision and move on. And that's why it's critical for us to understand things. Yes, we want to maximize cost, efficiency, designing sustainable processes, but we need to make sure that stuff is going to be safe when we do it at sensible scale. For those that are not familiar, these are the 4 major causes of safety accidents in the industry. Human errors, can AI help us prevent them? Chemical knowledge, again, related to the fact that we need to commit to the next step based on the available information at that point. Design faults, simply we don't design something well enough. And heat transfer capacity, the ability to remove enough heat in certain scenarios, okay, related to calorimetry. Because if you don't do it right, this still happens. Okay, this is 3 weeks ago, and it happened. Explosion in pharmaceutical plants. Okay, this still happens everywhere, worldwide. Okay, so let's get on a positive note, and let's talk about some of the challenges and opportunities in this space using leveraging AI. So we can look at few things. I just selected a few in the interest of time, looking at ways to make sustainable chemical processes, looking at the complex reaction outcome, okay, filling the data and information gap, okay, because we need to make decision. And ideally, this is more aspirational. Okay, we do scale up in minutes rather than months. Okay. So in terms of making processes more sustainable, there are a lot of components that we can look at. We can look at minimizing waste, looking at the possible time reaction that can trigger accidents that can lead to toxicity, failure to comply with authorities, and so on. Efficient use of resources. And because sustainability is a key driver nowadays for a lot of companies in this space, how do we use life cycle thinking in a way that's easy to use, that is quick to use, and maybe it helps to get better decision in terms of supply chain? We look at the pharmaceutical industry, majority of the emissions are actually scope 3, which are outside the factory floor. Okay, they're based on decision that you make based on your suppliers. Of course, technically, we can look at optimizing reaction condition, developing high throughput processes, leveraging process intensification, adopting novel technology to open up new reaction space, and ideally trying to go for low energy use technologies. This is just one of the few examples that you find in the literature that's been reported recently, where you can try to look at addressing a long and tedious job, which is the one of getting the life cycle environmental impacts of chemical, which is quite complex. Try to break it down into the format that can be sent into an artificial neural network and then give you a fair, accurate prediction for that information. Trying to do that manually, if you have not done it, you will know how painful this is. Okay. Or, for instance, you want to develop a new chemical process, you only have limited information, and you can use artificial intelligence hybrid models to generate flow sheets, so you can get a first feel on how the process should look like. Sure, you should always show this to your friends in the engineering departments to say, hey, this is not actually very good, or maybe it's missing a pump here and there. But you get the idea. The possibility that you can actually input text or simpler information that they are more, they're closer to the domain of chemists, biologists, and so on, and that gets a first cut of what the process might look like. And some that are even bolder, they're trying to combine the two concepts together, where you can actually put molecular structure and stoichiometry. You can both generate the flow sheets for the process, and then using different type of neural network, you can actually get the environmental impacts as well. Okay, so there's a lot of excitement in the various aspects of chemical process developments, whether it's from environmental, whether it's from technical, whether it's from the engineering, and so on. So where could AI help us in areas that maybe they are underserved at the moment? Or it's a long list, so and it's not by any means exhausted. All right. So there are things that we mentioned this morning about physical chemical properties predictions. Yes, there are certain tools. They are scattered. They are usually behind a paywall, and usually they require quite a lot of data sets behind them to work. And we do that with smaller data sets. Just a few experiments and then get what you want. Accurate calorimetric estimates from molecular description or even like a lab recipe, okay? Will be fantastic. No need to spend $500,000 in a reactive calorimeter, for instance, but probably still run the experiments anyway. A look at heat transfer, mass transfer data, equipment characterization. Ideally, you draw your process in software like Endro, then you convert that into a flow sheet, and the flow sheet is converted to a digital twin, and then from that, ideally, you convert to a large language model, and it becomes a batch record. Multi-factor decision making that help us limit the human error, possibly eradicate that, and analyze different things at the same time. Safety, cost, and environmental impacts without, compromise. Estimate the reaction outcome under extreme conditions. This is not trivial. Okay, you need to perform selected experiments to get enough information, and then we do it without performing the experiments. Or using video or image to text for contextual understanding. Take a picture of your process that is running, and the AI tells you what's going on. Okay, a generative compliant plan documentation. This is very tedious, but it's a necessary evil. And we have that. In principle, we have the technology, but why don't we use that? Why don't we see that? Maybe not yet. So we need to be aware of the gap. Okay, this could be like a lot of ones, but there are certain things that we are lacking. We don't have very good multiphasic data from experiments. Okay, we might have some scattered information, and very often we take a lot of assumption into this, but getting actual good quality data of multiphasic experiments, difficult. Also, having high throughput experimentation infrastructure that can give us not just doing screening of different compounds, that is useful for certain applications, but getting stuff that is important for scale dependency. So I run experiments at small scale, high throughput, and I record exactly the piece of information that I need for the scale up. Okay. Again, this is probably repeating what others say, but it means that is a common concern about getting accessible open source, ideally database platform with the relevant high quality information. At the moment, this is not so easily available. Of course, it has to be important that we get a good interdisciplinary collaboration between key domains. Getting people that they are experts in AI, and I mean experts that they do that all day long, and get people that they are focused, highly focused in chemistry or chemical engineering or biologics and so on, and really trying to combine their expertise in ways like, look, this is my domain. I don't understand yours, but you do. Can we come up with something interesting? I'll give you one example. What was done under the PIPS program, so the Pharma Innovative Program Singapore, with NTU, A-STAR, and SIT, using an experimental system that was looking at determining the best cleaning strategy for surface cleaning from contamination of active pharmaceutical ingredients, putting a video camera and connect the video feed to artificial intelligence to be able to first map all the stains on the token that was undergoing cleaning under certain conditions, and then determining when the cleaning was done, plot the information, and then compare that against first principles model. I have to say, that was the first time trying this, right? It didn't do a bad job, okay? So this is just one example. There are many more out there. But it's just to stimulate perhaps the conversation later on. Because AI have a dream, okay? That I can actually take pictures using an app on my phone, like what we do now. We can do now with Copilot, with ChatGPT, Claude, you name it, right? And get all the relevant information that allows me to then convert quickly in minutes into scalable process. So I will conclude with this. I hope that we will have fruitful discussion in a moment. We have a lot of firepower in the local ecosystem, and we should be aware of that, right? So I hope that we can actually find ways to make a difference in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerio. So we've seen three talks, right, from the practitioners in biologics, in the intersection between chemistry and biology, as well as in chemistry. Now let's flip. The next three talks will be about the data side of things, the computation side of things, the AI side of things, right? Where we have people who deploy some of these state-of-the-art methods towards the chemical, materials, and manufacturing sciences. So first, it's a pleasure to welcome Professor Hwee from NUS, and he'll be talking about machine learning as such for process modeling, control, and for diagnosis. So we'll flip the flavor of the session now more towards modeling, optimization, etc. So Jeff, the time is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Saif. So today I'd like to share some of our research and the thoughts on the opening issues for machine learning in process modeling, control, and for diagnosis. So first of all, I'd like to briefly introduce my research interests. So I focus on the four things here. So the first thing is AI in process modeling, optimization, and control. The second thing is AI in chemical process for diagnosis and cybersecurity. And the third thing is AI in broad areas of chemical engineering, including using AI techniques to accelerate material discovery in collaboration with our colleagues. And the last thing is computational modeling, like CFD simulation, Aspen simulation for the purpose of TA and LCA analysis. So today I will mainly focus on the first two things because it's quite highly relevant to our process model. So first of all, I'd like to introduce what process system engineering is. So process system engineering is in a disciplinary area which will integrate like modeling, data analytics, design, optimization, and control techniques to build a model for process operation. So basically, in my research, I focus on the framework of AI in chemical process control and optimization, including the theory, methods, and the the methods and also for the practical challenges. So we will discuss some details in the following slides. So the ultimate vision for this framework of AI is to build an integrated platform, or you can also call it digital twin, which is a virtual counterpart of our real-world chemical plant. And this digital twin can provide, the real-time simulation, monitoring, and predictive maintenance for our real-world chemical plant. So to build such a digital twin, we need to build an AI model, a good machine learning model that can represent our real-world system very well. So next, I'm going to use this toy example to introduce how we apply machine learning, especially neural net method, to model a chemical process. So here we consider a very simple continuous stirred tank reactor, CSTR. So such a reactor can be described by the following two equations. So they are basically mass and energy balance equations, describing how the concentration and temperature evolve over time within the reactor. So we assume a very simple reaction from A to B. We don't consider some specific reactions. Okay, so for simple chemical processes, we can use mass and energy balance equations to describe the physicochemical phenomenon very well. But for real-world chemical processes, especially like for chemical plants, we have multiple unit operations interconnected with each other. So it's very hard to build such a accurate first principle. And also for some complex chemical reactions, it's also very hard to determine like the kinetics. And therefore, we like to use machine learning, like neural net techniques, to build this model from data. So a simple way is to apply neural nets. So neural net is shown in this picture. So it's a bunch of neurons interconnecting with each other, representing a complex nonlinear relationship between input and output. So for this example, we can consider the output as the time derivative of concentration and temperature. So we like to know how the concentration and temperature change over time. So for the input of this neural net, it can be the variables like Ca, temperature, Q is the heating power, and the Ca0 is the inlet concentration. So all the possible variables that could affect the concentration. So this is the neural net input. So once we identify the neural net inputs and outputs, the second step is to collect the data set, right? So the data set could be from the experiments, from the daily process operation, or from computer simulations. And after we get the data set and identify the input output, then basically we formulate this neural net model. And there are many open source machine learning libraries nowadays that can easily do the job for us. So basically we know finding the optimal weights in the neural net is essentially solving optimization problems that try to minimize the error or the distance between your prediction and the label output. So once we get this neural net model, what can we use this model, right? So a typical application of this neural net model is to do optimization. So if we want to do the optimization, like to finding the best statistic, then we can get a steady state model. If we want to do real-time dynamic control, then we have to get a dynamic model. So we can incorporate the neural net model into optimization problems and try to find the best decision variable. It could be the manipulated inputs, or it could be the optimal steady state, depending on the user's need. So this is just a simple application of neural net in process model. So next, we apply this simple neural net approach to many different processes, including chemical, pharmaceutical, and energy systems, and demonstrate their effectiveness. So in conclusion, so we know this conventional neural network has its advantage if we have a large data set. But the question is, usually the machine learning model do not extract it well and require big data set. And such a big data set may not be available in practice. So how do we tackle this challenge? So one of the possible solutions here is to integrate data with domain knowledge. Because as chemical engineers, we always know some type of a priori process knowledge or domain knowledge. So a very typical way to do physics-informed machine learning is to incorporate the first principle model, or sometimes it's called governing equations, into the training of machine learning. So for example, here we can introduce another physics-informed loss term, which is basically the left-hand side of your ordinary differential equations minus the right-hand side of ordinary differential equations. So by introducing this physics-informed loss, we can significantly reduce the amount of data we needed for training such a neural networks. And also we apply this physics-informed machine learning to the previously introduced CSTR example. And we demonstrate that by introducing this physics-informed loss term, we improve its generalization performance. So beyond the training data set, and also we significantly reduce the training favor, the sample size. So however, there are some open questions in physics-informed machine learning area. So for example, if there are any other type of domain knowledge that we can introduce. So currently, most of the physics-informed machine learning work you can find online is to introduce first principle model into the training process. However, we know there are, of course, many other type of domain knowledge. So there should be some other ways to introduce different type of domain knowledge into machine learning model process. And also how. So one typical way is to introduce another loss term. Of course, we can also modify the neural network architecture to introduce some hard constraint into the model process. So there are many other ways, and this is the opening questions that all of us can think about for physics information. So the second challenge in machine learning-based modeling is transfer learning. So transfer learning is to address the challenge that usually the label data is limited for a new process. So here I again use another example, simple example, to demonstrate the idea of transfer learning. So suppose we have a target process. It could be some specific reaction in some specific type of reactors. So when we have a new manufacturing process, it always takes some time to collect enough data. So how do we build a good model at the initial stage when we have only very limited data? So what if we have already some existing process? We call it source process with similar configurations. So similar configurations refer to some similar reactions. Maybe they don't have to be exactly the same reaction, or in similar type of reactors, like different size of CSTR, or even entirely different reactors. So can we transfer the knowledge that we developed in the past process to the new process, such that we can again reduce the data amount? So this is the idea of transfer. So again, we apply the transfer learning to the same example. So this time we have a target process, but we only have very limited data. And we use a bunch of soft processes with sufficient data. And then we use transfer learning techniques to transfer the existing machine learning models to the new process with very limited new data. And again, there are some open questions that remain to be solved. For example, how to build a good pre-trained models. So in other words, how do we collect sufficient data for the similar source process? So basically, it requires a so-called foundation model. So foundation model is also like the key component in ChatGPT, where we need to have a very large data set, and then we build a good pre-trained models. So this is the remaining challenge for transfer learning. And the third challenge I like to highlight here for the methodology part is the safety in machine learning. So we know for chemical industry, safety is always one of the most important topic. So basically, we want to ensure safety of machine learning model in its life, each stage of its life cycle, including learning, modeling, and implementations. So here, I again use a simple example. So we know reinforcement learning is to learn an optimal decision by interacting with the environment. However, we know for chemical industry, it's always very difficult to apply reinforcement learning because we cannot allow a computer to try some dangerous, temperature or pressure in order to learn the best decision-making process. And therefore, if we can introduce some safeguard mechanism that can ensure the learning process is kept within a safe operating region within reinforcement learning, then we basically guarantee the safety of our machine learning models, at least in the learning stage. So the remaining question is, how can we incorporate the safety concerns into the other stages of machine learning, like for modeling and implementation? All right, so next I'd like to discuss 2 points in the challenges for machine learning based modeling. So this is more about the theoretical state. So we know for machine learning models, regardless of physics informed machine learning or the traditional black box neural networks. So the training process is like we have a training data set, and then we build a model on this training data set. And we can see the training error or the validation error at the end. However, a more important question is, we do not know how this model will perform on some new unseen test. So which means if we like to apply this neural network model to a real world system, we do not know how this model will. So this is actually the the so-called generalization area in the neural network. So for this generalization performance, we derive such a mathematical upper bound for the generalization area that can characterize the upper bound for the generalization area, depending on its training area and the model complex. So it theoretically guides us how to construct a neural network such that you can keep your testing area or the generalization area as small as possible. And the second part is machine learning modeling of hyperdynamic systems. So for all the previous examples we discussed, like for modeling of CSTR, we know it's a continuous process. So machine learning model can do very well for modeling of either continuous or discrete time systems. However, it's hard for machine learning to capture the both continuous and discrete dynamic at the same time. So in this work, we built a machine learning model for hyperdynamic systems that can capture both behaviors. So some other practical challenges I'd like to highlight here. So first of all, if we like to apply machine learning modeling approach to large-scale systems, then a common issue here is curse of dimensionality. So curse of dimensionality refers to the phenomenon that if you have a large system with a large number of variables, then the data size you need will grow exponentially. And also the model complexity will be very high. So to address this issue, some potential solutions is to use feature extraction or feature selection to do a reduced order modeling process. And the second issue is model uncertainty. So machine learning models are typically built using historical data. However, if we apply the machine learning model to the real world system that could subject to disturbances or model uncertainty, then we need to introduce online learning to update the model parameters in real time, such that this model can capture the real-time dynamics. And for the third part, the robustness. So robustness means we like to avoid the overfitting of machine learning models. So one way is to introduce dropout. However, if there's any other way that can build an inherently robust design of neural networks, so we've also done some preliminary work in this area. But of course, there are many other possible ways to address the robustness issue. And the last issue is computational efficiency. So after we get the model, we will use the machine learning model, for example, in optimization problems or in advanced control. Then we know the optimization problems could be a non-convex or NP-hard because the machine learning model is essentially a non-linear, non-convex. If we need to introduce machine learning into like the real-time control problems, then we need to make sure the computation time is as low as possible. So in this part, we developed the input convex neural network to try to improve the computational efficiency of machine learning models. So this is thing one, where we developed some recent works for AI in process modeling, optimization, and control. And for the second thing, I like to point out the use of AI in process fault diagnosis and cybersecurity. So for the first part, the process modeling, we know it's essentially a regression problem. So for the second part, it's essentially application of AI for classification problems. So we know traditional process fault diagnosis is basically try to identify the process fault in daily process operation. So nowadays, cybersecurity is another important issue in chemical industries. So here I list the difference between process fault and cyber attacks. So basically their impact to be similar because basically they disrupt the normal operation. However, the cyber attacks are designed in a different way because they are intentionally to disrupt your normal operation as fast as possible. So this is unlike the process fault. So again, machine learning and AI can be used to improve cybersecurity. So here, basically, we have two ways to detect cyber attacks. One is model-based method, and the other way is data-based method. So for model-based method, it's similar to the digital twin, the process model. The first step is to have a good model, and then we can rely on this model to do some prediction. So if we see some major deviation between the prediction and your real sensor measurement, then it's a signal that there is cyber attack in the system. And the other way is data-based method. So we don't have a process model. Instead, we just directly use the real-time sensor data to detect whether there's an attack or not. So this is data-based method. So the open question for the database method is how to build a good representative data set under different scenarios like attack or no attack. Because like I mentioned, this is essentially a classification problems where we try to identify like two classes. It's either under attack or under no attack. So the data set is the key component for cybersecurity. So lastly, I like to emphasize that in addition to research, we are also actively bringing the AI stuff into the undergrad and grad courses in our department. So we opened a new course, machine learning in chemical engineering, and the optimization of chemical process. And also in the future, we will also introduce the AI in robotics in our department. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to discuss any other questions in the later.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we are running 15 minutes behind time. So here's what we'll do. We have 2 more talks left. And then what we'll do is we'll combine the tea and coffee break and the snacks with the brainstorming session. So hold on, I will have more to say about that after the next couple of talks. So it's a pleasure to invite Xunyuan Yin from NTU to continue this theme about machine learning enabling process design, process optimization, and to discuss further nuances carrying on from where Jill left. So Xunyuan, time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much, Professor Khan, for inviting me to participate in this workshop. And since we are behind the timeline, so I'll try to speed up. And my name is Xunyuan. I'm a assistant professor from School of Chemistry, Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology for alumni from NTU. And so I'll be talking about some of the share with you some of our thoughts, as well as some research briefly related to process design, process monitoring, and the real-time optimization. And actually, our research complements so what the research professor is doing at the US. And in terms of background, we focus on developing system-level solutions for large-scale and complex chemical processes and biological processes. And we understand that these processes, although they are used for producing different products for various purposes, they share something important. First of all, they have very large scales, and dynamics have a very high dynamic range. And we understand that whether it's chemical process or petrochemical, biological, they will employ very complex structures, which incorporate physical units of different scales of different types that are tightly integrated with each other. At the same time, there is a strict requirement on the performance of the manufacturing activities. First of all, we'll need to ensure the production and operational safety. We'll need to meet the even more strict environmental regulations and to satisfy the operational specifications so that the production performance is consistent. The product quality is meets the level or expectation of the customers. And more importantly, we need to ensure the operation is sustainable. And after all, the company can make money from the manufacturing activity, which is not easy. And people argue that digital transformation has been crucial for chemical industry. Of course, to meet the operation specification and to ensure the production is efficient and profitable itself is already not that easy. But in addition to that, so we are forced to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions. And for the chemical processing alone, in 2021, worldwide speaking, it produced about over 900 million metric tons of CO2. And this accounts for costs way larger than 2% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And companies have witnessed this critical problem, and they are embracing digitalization, or we call digital transformation. And digital transformation, of course, is playing and will be playing a more important role in revolutionizing the operation of process operations in chemical industry and beyond. And for our system, process system engineers, it will bring about the below benefits. So first of all, it can help us to characterize the dynamic behavior, or we call it prediction. And we can use the digital tools to perform comprehensive, accurate, precise, real-time monitoring of what is happening in the process. And in addition, with the sensing information, we are able to make more informed decisions in terms of how we coordinate the manufacturing activities, how we manage the real-time productions. And this is about the coordination and the distribution. And so we envision that ultimately we would like to develop high fidelity, robust machine learning digital twins. So such digital twins will serve as the key for smart manufacturing and of course, including process design. So smart monitoring, sensing, and automation in order to ultimately achieve sustainability in multiple dimensions in chemical manufacturing fields. Okay. And as for us, our group, as well as Professor Wu at AUS, we identify ourselves as process system engineers. We address problems including process sensing, for detection, control, real-time optimization, and we also conduct some of the process designs so that they are compatible with our process control solutions. So here is a very brief overview about what process control means. Okay, basically we have the process. So considering the process is already there, and we look at like the small time scale of the system operation. We consider the dynamic behavior of the process, and we use the process control system to regulate in real time how the system should behave. For example, we intervene the process operation, we change the flow rate, we change the heating input, we adjust the pressure so that we force the system operation towards a level which is more desirable, and we ensure the safety of the process operation. But the controller itself, or we call it advanced process control itself, is not sufficient. Because remember that when we make informed decisions, we need good algorithms. But at the same time, we also need comprehensive information about what is happening in the process. And by addressing this, we could use a process sensing scheme, which we call it state estimator or state inference. It takes advantage of the limited hardware sensor information, and we use some our developed algorithms to infer, to estimate, or to predict what is happening. About, for example, I probably will use a very simple example to illustrate. Okay, so this is a very simple reactor. So we use this for illustration. Even for this simple reactor, we can now use inline sensor to measure the concentration of the reactant or the product, realistically speaking. Okay, so what we can do is that we have a temperature sensor to measure the temperature of the liquid inside continuously. And if we can have a model, a dynamic model, then we can use a process sensing scheme to estimate the concentration in time, like in real-time sense, so that we will have information about the concentration of the material as well as the real-time temperature, so that such information will be critical for us to make informed decision about how we adjust the heating input, how we adjust the inlet flow rate, so that the production performance is improved. Okay, and this is the state estimate and the control, and from a practical point of view, we will integrate both components together. Okay, so in terms of applications, of course, process sensing and control are progressively adopted in many industries, almost all the application examples. Here, I would like to use some case studies we have been considering for illustration purposes. So in one project, we can see the attachment of carbon capture process to the ship in order to mitigate, not to mitigate the emission, but to capture the carbon content in the emission of the ship engines. And this is a more realistic, realization of mitigating carbon emission from ships in the near future, say like in the next 1 or 2 decades. And we also consider power to liquid plants to produce methanol in a very green way. So we use electrolyzer to produce hydrogen, and then we produce methanol. And this mitigates the carbon emission, of course, because some of the CO2 has been taken advantage in the reactor to produce methanol. Another is the wastewater treatment plants, which involve both biological reaction and chemical reactions. Here, I use these three examples to highlight some of the challenges we are facing actually. In the previous slide, we can develop the estimation, or we call it sensing and control algorithms for the reactors very well. You can even provide a theoretical graph. Without experiments, we can like I would say 90% confidence know that what will happen for the control and sensing scheme. But for these large processes, honestly speaking, it has been challenging for us to develop applicable and scalable process sensing and control solutions. And this motivates us, has motivated us to think about how we can revolutionize our research from both theoretical and applied point of view. Okay, so here are some challenges we have faced as we deal with the large-scale complex processes. So first of all, it's about the complexity. And because of the complexity and the large scales, we have experienced very complex dynamical behaviors. And imagine if you would like to use physical knowledge to build a first principle model for the chemical reactor, we know the kinetics, and we can identify or we can use empirical knowledge to estimate some of the model parameters. It's not a problem. But for the large processes, for the carbon capture, it involves hundreds of states. For the biological reactor or water treatment, so based on how precise we like to discrete a system, we may have 200 up to 1,000 state variables. I mean, P quality variables. So that number could easily reach 1,000. For that type of processes, it of course exhibits very complex dynamical behaviors. And this will also lead to multiple time scales and multiple physics, as has been highlighted by Professor Khan. And variations in operational conditions. Okay. Theoretically speaking, for the reactor, probably say we're to have the desired productive concentration to be 3 mole per liter. But this is not the case. So our goal changes. For example, when we produce methanol, if we use some electricity, the electricity price fluctuates. If you process the wastewater, we receive the wastewater from the upstream. So the amount of wastewater we will receive is not controlled by us. We will need to process what we receive. And another story is about the shape carbon capture. The shape may be operated at different loads, probably manuring, freezing, and processing. How much emission the carbon capture process will receive will be purely dependent on the current load of the engine. And this will lead to significant variations in the operational conditions. We will need to take these into account. And of course, some of the uncertainties and the disturbances, okay, they are prevalent, they are unstoppable, okay? And all these processes, no matter it looks green or not, so the fact is that they consume a lot of energy and they produce a lot of carbon emissions. And we'll need to think about how we develop the sensing and control schemes, how we build the models, and even like for our upstream level, how we design the process properly to mitigate carbon emissions, to reduce energy consumptions. Of course, before we achieve completely the carbon neutral manufacturing. So it has been widely accepted that machine learning will be able to drive industrial digital transformation. And machine learning will play an even more important role in this process. But as we have made some initial attempts in applying machine learning to address different problems in our research program, we have experienced some more challenges as we leverage machine learning, as we actively modify machine learning algorithms to address problems we are facing as process engineers. Okay, so first is the data scarcity. We do have a lack of sufficient data, especially for academia. Okay, so companies may probably have some data on their own, but it will be difficult for us to share with us. Okay, another associated problem is about the privacy. Okay, so privacy is another concern from industry partners. So safety of course. So when we apply machine learning, whether the model will perform robustly so that the safety will be ensured, that is one important concern. Another concern is about the data privacy. They will share data through network communication. So they will share data through cloud. So they have concerns about whether the data are properly protected. Okay, this is something we need to think about. For example, when we perform process sensing, when we perform process control, we need to consider how about we need the data obfuscation or data encryption. But that is fine from data protection point of view. But some of the essential information will be hidden after data encryption. Okay, so this will stop us from implementing some of the advanced process control algorithms. So we'll need to rethink how machine learning can be used, how to leverage them appropriately to address these issues. And another is about the multimodal data. We may have vision data, we may have optical data, we may have some text information. How we combine this all the information together. So this may involve the concept of foundation modeling, okay, and robustness and reliability. Some of the speakers have talked about this robustness. So this is a computer vision problem. So image identification. If we add some noise, so the answer will become completely ridiculous. Okay. And we also witness similar problems. Say at one operating condition, we build a model for a carbon capture process of with a certain size. After we vary the size a little bit, and if we change the operating condition a little bit, the prediction results given by the model may become much worse. This is also something we need to address. Another is about the scalability. This is a picture of the carbon capture process in our lab. We have built a machine learning model for this lab scale facility. No problem. We have seen very beautiful prediction results. But now we are worried about how we scale up not only the model, because honestly speaking, the model will not be applicable to the large scale process anyways. We are concerned about how we leverage if the current machine learning model algorithm may be leveraged directly to address, for example, pilot scale plant. And if yes, can we further scale it up for the real plant? Okay, explainability. Okay, when we partner with, for example, industry, when we develop a machine learning algorithm, so eventually, who will interact with the machine learning model, interact with the sensing and control scheme will be the process operators. So they will need to have a good sleep during that. So they will ask us whether the solution will be reliable. So we say, okay, we have tested the algorithms on our computers. They will not be convinced. They would like to see something. They would like to see something inside of the black box. And this is about the explainability of the use of machine learning. Okay, so next I would like to quickly discuss some of our initial attempts on applying or incorporating machine learning into process system solutions. So the first one is about the so-called deep learning, Xunyuan sensing and control. So Xunyuan is a specific terminology in control field, but we could omit it. This is the overall illustrative diagram. We are dealing with nonlinear processes. We use the nonlinear function, the most general nonlinear function, to characterize about like probably 90% of the industrial processes. This is a very general expression. So the advantage of Xunyuan modeling is that we can use linear operators govern the nonlinear dynamics globally. Theoretically speaking, it's very beautiful. But the problem is that it involves intricate nonlinear mapping from the original state space to a lifted space. So this is related to mathematical concepts. But for this lifting, space lifting is of course non-trivial. And we found that machine learning can be used if sufficient data is provided. It can be used to appropriately and effectively build a link or build a nonlinear mapping from the original state space, say temperature, pressure, and concentration, to a lifted space where the physical meaning of the states are missing. But it's fine. So we deal with in a mathematical way. And by leveraging machine learning and the Xunyuan modeling framework, we have developed a process sensing scheme. So this scheme can be used to estimate in real time the concentration of the materials. So based on limited environments about the temperatures and pressures and the flow rates. Okay. So here are some quick model training and process sensing results. And Xunyuan framework together with deep learning have also been implemented, have been seamlessly integrated in our research for real-time optimal control. And we have leveraged recurrent neural networks to deal with another problems, which is the time delay, which is the pervasive in process industry. And we have built a probabilistic machine learning model to account for the system uncertainties and the time delay, and give us some quick control results. We are also considering fault detection problems. So we have been working on fault detection problems for years. And this is yet another machine learning algorithm. We leverage the so-called distributed framework, which means that we divide the big problem into smaller sub-problems. So probably when we leverage machine learning, we may also rethink the problem in this way. So can we build multiple machine learning agents instead of one when we deal with large-scale processes, or when we consider the scaling up of a certain solution? Okay, so here are some fault detection results. And another topic we are considering is about the use of machine learning to accelerate optimal process design and the steady-state optimization. And this is a whole framework we have proposed in this paper. And we have leveraged a deep neural network to characterize the relationship between inputs and outputs for some of the key components inside of this simple carbon capture process. We use machine learning to account for the diesel engine, to account for the auxiliary engine on ship, to produce additional power to power the carbon capture process. We also have another deep learning model to account for the absorption column and the desorption column. And we have performed some comparisons in effort. So using machine learning can help us to reduce the energy consumption. So considering steady state operation by at least 10 to 15%. Okay, so here are some big machine learning results. This is an acknowledgement about the contributors who have been working with us on the research discussed before. Okay, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Xunyuan. I think we're beginning to appreciate the complexity of the problems we deal with when we deal with manufacturing and process systems, right? So with that, the last presentation is actually a tag team across A-star institutes. We'll start with Andrew, and we'll be talking about essentially test bedding, scale up, and digitalization approaches towards process development. So Andrew, time is yours.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the organizers for inviting us to give a talk on our program, which is the Low Carbon Technology Translational Testbed program. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the engineers working on this program, which is a national initiative to try and establish a rapid test bedding platform for low carbon technology. So carbon capture. So for carbon capture technologies, CO2 to chemicals technologies, and also hydrogen technologies. So as mentioned, this at least for the AI portion or the AI work done within the program, it's a collaborative work done between IC Square, IHPC, and also I Square. Okay, so how do we actually accelerate or enable rapid test bedding within this platform is by a combination of two key concepts, which are modularization and digitalization. So modularization looks at the entire process plant and splits them into different process functions, and it puts them as a process module. So you have different modules covering different process functions like reaction, pressure increase, or separation technologies. And by piecing these process modules together, we can form an entire process plant. And what this enables us to do is to be able to reconfigure the process as per the requirement of individual different test bed projects for different technologies that we want to scale up. Okay, so you can see that not only that the physical part of the process plant needs to be modular, the automation and the process control systems also have to be modular. So what we have adopted is this module type package, which is a new international standard for modular automation, which enables plug and produce type technology. So it further accelerates the reconfiguration time and the engineering, and reduces the engineering time taken to assemble a test bed for testing. And on the other side, the digitalization side, we have an integrated digital twin which supports and enables the modularization. Because modularization of a process plant is complex, we need the digital tools to enable us and to support us in managing the modular plant. So we have 3 key digital tools which are integrated to form an integrated digital twin. The process automation, which forms an operational model, process behavior model, process simulation, and also the plant and the asset model, which contains and puts all the plant and facility data into a database so we can manage the entire facility as a whole. And this brings us flexibility, speed, efficiency, and cost effectiveness. Okay, so through the use of our digital twin, we are able to support throughout the entire life cycle of the process plant, from product development all the way up to production, which is and production and maintenance, which has been, I think, the key focus of this entire series of talks. So I think also Valerio has also covered some portion of the process development point, and we are also focusing on the process development phase as a piloting facility. So where we see AI being able to be deployed to further accelerate and to enable us to do the testing in a more systematic and organized manner and a more efficient manner, is that that is able to help us select and evaluate different process technologies, the right ones and the most optimized process technologies which fit the new product that we want to test bed. So when the product comes in to the test bedding facility, we need to evaluate what is the most appropriate technologies, process technologies to fully enable the production of this chemical through the different steps, not only looking at the reaction technology, but also the separation technology. Second, I think, which is more focused towards the module and the equipment selection. This is also a crucial time-consuming part of the process development phase, where you need to spend a lot of time doing the process engineering work and also equipment selection for the different test beds that we want to test, for the different products that we want to test. Modular plant safety has been mentioned quite, plant safety itself has been mentioned quite a bit, but bringing that modular aspect into the process plant increases the complexity. So we also see that AI being able to help to tackle this complexity with modular plant safety. And I think the most hot topic currently, especially with the commercial simulation vendors being able to, we see them developing AI and ML tools specifically for plant and process optimization applications. And of course, I think this has also been mentioned, also multi-factor analysis for decision-making purposes, such as time gain of LCA and TEA. Okay, so what have we been working on? This is an example of what we have been trying to develop in terms of AI capabilities within the program itself. So this is a work done by HPC, where they have developed a CFD first principle model, which is highly complex. And what we are trying to do is to use an AI segregate model to be able to integrate this complex model into a process level simulation. So this enables us to use the highly complex CFD model through the segregate model and be able to tie it back into the entire process level simulation. So then I will pass to Wei from I2R to continue to talk more in depth into this AI model.
Yeah, so ISRA is partner to IHPC in this project. So the way we see it is that we have a very complicated and complex and realistic simulation model, CFD simulation model from our collaborator in IHPC. And the challenge there is that it is very realistic, so it is also very compute intensive to run. So the way that we see it, how AI can come in to help them is to come up with an AI surrogate model for the simulation model, such that we have not only to take in data from the simulation model, but it can also take in real-time data from the reactor at different temporal and spatial resolution. So it serves as a way to blend different data sources into one single model, unified model, that we can use to learn very good control using very flexible AI and machine learning techniques like reinforcement learning to control the real-time reactor. And because the reinforcement learning algorithm is also a very flexible algorithm, so we can also take in real-time reactor data to train that as well. So as you can see, AI comes in many ways. AI comes in as a way to accelerate the simulation. It also comes in as a way to blend all the different kinds of data together. And then it also serves as a way for us to control the reactor at the different time scales, different spatial scales. So here I'll show you a very quick result of what we've been able to achieve. So here we came up with an AI surrogate model based on deep neural network, because we expect in the next phase of the project to be receiving a lot of data from our collaborators, both from the experimental side and as well as the simulation side. So being able to use neural network means that we'll be able to use all these new compute resources that are coming out from all these chip companies that can run on and train on very large data sets. And so here we show some preliminary result for predicting the hydrocarbon concentration for the CO2 to sustainable aviation fuel reaction. So here you can see the prediction is actually doing very well as compared to the simulation result. And this is a model that is generalizable between different temperatures, pressure, velocity, and input reactant ratios. So this is very good result that I've been able to get with my team. So on the reinforcement learning optimization side, we came up with a way to control the hydrocarbon concentration. And this is based on the reinforcement learning framework, in which a policy approximator is learned from its interaction with an environment. So in this case, the environment that we're using is the AI surrogate model, or even the very complex CFD model. So the policy approximator will sample actions from it will give an action from a policy distribution to be used to change the state. So the state in this case is the concentration of the reactants and products along the reactor length and along the time axis as well. And that action will change the state in some ways that will result in a certain reward being given back to the policy approximator that tells it whether this new state that we get after the action is applied is a better state for the reaction. For example, in this case, we are trying to optimize the temporal hydrocarbon profile. So in this case, this optimizer is based on neural network, and it's able to very dynamically learn from both the reactor and simulation data. That's what we expect it to be able to do. And it can also deal with very dynamic environments and complex reaction because it is a deep neural network based method.
Thank you, Hwee, for that. Okay, so we have now heard one example of how we have incorporated AI into our test-bed facility or test-bedding program. So here are another two, I say, near future possibilities of work that we are targeting to do. So one is a knowledge graph of process modules, and one is a process design generation for with relation to a modular concept. So this moves away from that single unit and it moves up into the process level. So we are looking at various different aspects of where AI and ML tools and technologies can be implemented throughout the entire process plant, not just at the equipment level. Okay, so where we see this platform playing a role in AI development and bringing these AI technologies to industrial adoption is that since this facility or this program has been built from the ground up as a very data-driven, highly digitalized system, it will be easier to integrate and be able to test different novel AI and ML technologies being developed for the process industry. And being a test-bed facility, there's no risk that it will affect a production plant. So being a test bedding facility, we have the advantage of being able to put in very novel and highly advanced technologies to be able to test them. And also on the point of being able to get reliable data and relevant data for AI training and ML training. This facility, being at the scale of a pilot plant, is able to generate data which is at a relevant scale. And also being modular, we are able to more rapidly do many different test beds. So we are able to also accelerate the generation of the data coming out from the facility. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew and Hwee. So we've seen a round of talks that cover a fairly wide spectrum. So it's time to sort of think a little bit. So now we, according to the schedule, we're about 20 minutes late or behind schedule. I wouldn't say late. We've had a lot of discussions. So what we'd like to do, and for those folks online, is we'll take a break right now. But before we go for the break, let's get some rules, ground rules. There is this QR code here, especially for the online participants. You can go to this QR code. Actually, all of you can access it, but don't yet. Let me just say something. So the online people can all access it. They can virtually join your table. Yeah, so there are 5 tables, and they can virtually join your table and give inputs to some of the key questions that we will sort of discuss. Okay, so that's one. Now, if I get, because we have a limited number of participants for this pigeonhole, we'll let all the online participants get in, and 1 person per table can also access the pigeonhole so that they can see what the people visiting your table are saying, right? So what we're going to do in this next session is you can go get your tea, coffee, snacks, etc. Come back to your table. And I think, as Kedar also pointed out, the key thing we want to discuss is grand challenges for your respective domain area. What are the grand challenges, especially the AI for science grand challenges that we want to see, right? We've seen a lot of vision statements here. Let's build on those. And so for each table, discuss your vision statements. What are the grand challenges? How can AI enable solutions to those grand challenges? We've already seen a few, right? And also, what needs to be done in terms of data, etc., to accomplish those. I think we can have a robust discussion about those for the individual subject domains and for table X over there. And then we'll come back in an hour, so around 12:15. I will require one volunteer from each table to give a 5-minute summary of what they discussed at the table. What we discussed at the table. Again, in the spirit of identifying grand challenges, which we can then concretize in the form of a white paper that we'll write that adds on to the capabilities white paper that Kedar spoke about. That's our job for today, is to take the input from all these talks, which hopefully have gotten you thinking, and to identify what are those frontier challenges for AI for science in the manufacturing context that we can potentially pose and potentially address. Right? With that, now let's go to that one slide where I had questions. So the slide before this, I believe, right? And then we'll come back to this so that you can scan this. Right? So the guiding questions: what are the scientific and technical challenges and opportunities? What is the role of AI? Where will the data come from? Pretty much every speaker spoke about data, the provenance of the data, and what is the potential. Let's think about these over tea, coffee, and have vivid discussions. We'll reconvene at 12:15 for 5-minute summaries from every team. I'll sort of wrap up and then we can all have lunch. So let's go back to the pigeonhole. The pigeonhole barcode, the QR code is scannable. Perhaps we can do one per table, and then we can start our discussions immediately. So please help yourselves to tea, coffee, snacks. Come back to your tables and let's have a vivid discussion. And for those online, please feel free to contribute to the pigeonhole. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you guys back in a minute.
For in 5 minutes, but I'll try my best. And I think the first point I just want to mention here under grand challenges, maybe to represent my team here, is that there is a need. I think we all feel there's a need to actually gather a lot of open to establish what is called open source, large diverse data. So that appears to be so the keyword is open source, and we know this the difficulties with that because we are talking about asking the right companies, industries also to, if possible, share some of those data inside the open source, maybe anonymized. Okay, we have no ideas right now on measures of how to go about this, but this will certainly enable rapid development, acceleration of learning for the models. Right, so that therefore also means that many experiments, right, both in upstream and downstream biologics manufacturing. Yeah, I forgot to mention that although we are supposed to talk about biologics manufacturing, and the I think to then as what earlier speakers, some of the speakers have mentioned, to input some of this domain knowledge that we have about biologics manufacturing, whether it be monoclonal antibodies or it could be bioreactor manufacturing. So what sort of domain knowledge we can put in, and here we are a bit of debate, in terms of how much domain knowledge versus how much data, right? Real wet lab experimental data. Can there be a balance? Do we need to achieve a balance, or if we have one or more of the of this, what's the impact of this for learning of the AI model? Right, and then two more points. One is on, you've heard about also digital twin from my colleague Ian there earlier, digital twin for studying the process, whether it's whatever biologics it is, at pilot scale. Lab scale usually is developed at that scale. So if you apply the digital twin at that scale, can that model be scaled up to manufacturing scale, right? What you see in the companies again. Therein probably we need data from the industries, the manufacturing companies. So how do we facilitate this? Right, and lastly, I think at another workshop, as what Saif mentioned, there will be an AI for materials and chemicals, and that's looking more at the asset, right, of manufacturing. Here, we are actually trying to address the manufacturing of the asset. So the innovation in terms of therapeutic benefit and all that will be another workshop. But in this case, what about the manufacturability of the asset? So that's the last key thing there, for the developability of the asset. What the team came up with, right? So you can have a very super good asset, right, that can treat, right, wonder drug and treat the patients, but if you cannot manufacture it, right? That's the big problem too. So the manufacturability of candidates, what are the key, parameters here that we want to use models to identify? That would be quite crucial, right? And then lastly, the time, cost, and sustainability of the whole process, which I think I do not need to mention further because the earlier talks have all touched on this point, right? So I think that's all I have to summarize the grand chart of this. Yeah, actually that's the impact and all that, but I think I'll leave that to another team to do that.
Thank you very much. We can ask questions amongst tables at lunch. Let's do Google's random number generator. Table 5.
One again.
No, it's okay. Table 5. So now we go from table 1 to table 5, modeling, digitalization. And Jarvis, you're going to present for the. Oh, you have it submitted on the. Yeah, okay. We can. So table 5. This is table. Yeah, modeling, simulation, and design. Yeah, it's right here. We can project this screen.
Speak here, so you're close to this. Yeah, put it on your collar. As close to your voice as possible. All right.
Okay, hello. I'm broken. So we are from the modeling and simulation and design group discussing about, I think mainly the discussion is mainly on the grand challenges, right? And what are the opportunities for the different people. So one is the limited data that we have in certain fields among the attendees or the group members. In terms of quantity and quality, I think quantity we know very well, but quality, how can we better improve the data? I think one of us mentioned about his main problem that he has is there's too much noise in some of the data. So collection. So when data sets come in, right, they might have a different amount of data that there is a big challenge to put all of this data together. So number 2 is how do you better assimilate, put together the experimental and simulation data in a good way. So talking about fusing them in a good way. And a very specific challenge that we have is accurate representation of transient state. So a lot of these models are involved in using data that is at a steady state form, but there are transient states. Sometimes these transient states actually matter a lot in the model. So how can we better accurately represent them? And then can we improve the design of experiments? So instead of in most design experiments, in most DOE you have a lot of data, or you collect too much data in I won't say too many data points, but data that involves too many things that will not be considered or will not matter in the final model that you are going to build or develop, right? So how can we get a sense of this at the very start? So improving that design from the very start. And rationalization of models. So we hope that a model can have better understanding of of the world itself, or the relationship between different parts of the model. And integration of data of multiple fidelity. So in simulation especially, we have simulation experiments done at different length scale or different time scales. So all this data have to be put together or integrated in a good way. And opportunities is basically we are addressing all the different, other than experimentalists or simulation people, how can we better add or include our domain knowledge to our the information or the knowledge that we gain from the AI in a good way, so that we can to improve the data or to increase the amount of data that we have. And of course, multi-scale models, multi-scale or simulations that are done at different multi-scales. So how can we better select different types of simulation for the model? I have another one. You go to, I think that's a simple one. Another submission. Source of data. Okay. So other than open source simulation experimental data, also generated data. So generated data are added to whatever that we have, or we have obtained from simulation, or crawled from literature, or obtained through experiments. How can we do that in a good way, together with high throughput experiments or high throughput algorithms in an iterative way, so that we can make it more efficient. Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's see, 3 tables left. Okay. Table 3. Who's the volunteer? Punch me. Paul?
I'm the only one who's stupid enough to write anything down.
Your whole.
We had a very interesting chat. Given that none of us is currently manufacturing, a few of us have ever worked in manufacturing. We mostly concentrated on getting to manufacturing, which is probably a good place for us to be. Thing we really picked up was around the potential to use AI and scale up. It's a significant challenge for everybody, to give us operable processes and to give us reasonable cost and reliability in that scale up process. We saw a grand challenge around the use of AI to enable faster, cheaper, and more reliable scale up. And that could help us do a whole range of things that happen during process development, like integrating available data. We've heard about open source data that might come from a priori predictions from computational methods, whether that's quantum mechanics or molecular dynamics or even standard process software, and data we need to measure. It might help us to identify the gaps in the data where we need to carry out measurements. So it might work to support experimental design, meaningful experimental design. And it might and some of the ideas that came up with, the best idea that came up was around using it as having some canonical sets of proven examples of models that could be used for training. So we could take models that have worked for, have been proven to work for scale up for particular cases, and then use transfer learning to be able to train those models more effectively with less data, and therefore get to where we need to be cheaper and faster. I think that's about it.
Thank you very much.
Because I'm hungry.
Table 4. Lennon, come.
Hi everyone, so I'm representing table 4 because my handwriting was not that legible. So I'm here on behalf of them. And we came up with many interesting ideas. I tried to synthesize them together into overall one. So what we thought was a foundation model for chemical processes and systems. So one idea brought up was that, and he gave an example, is for example, even in fruit picking, there was this foundation model trained on vision. And then they were actually able to use it just with 50 images to pick ripe apples. So if you can create a foundation model for chemical processes and systems, perhaps that's something that you can then keep using it for all your different specialized processes. At the same time, you don't have to worry that you are leaking out proprietary kind of information that maybe you want to keep it to yourself. So with this foundation model, we can predict, the idea is we can use it to predict physical properties of maybe the APIs you're looking at, or some of these drugs and biologics. You can do automated flow sheets. You can also have greener pathways, maybe even inverse process design. You can also look at process safety. So that's all coming from this, and hopefully eventually even get fully automated, in the words of our teammate, lights off and AC off manufacturing, where you really take advantage of as much automation and sensors to basically run the models and the processors. The main problem, as everyone knows, is data. So with data, how do we actually overcome that issue? One way that was brought up was by federated learning. So you don't actually get the data, you train it on site where the customer's data sits. And the data never gets transferred to you. All you get back is the model parameters. So another way, of course, is you use like modeling with limited data to transfer learning. You also use maybe inline PATs and sensors to get more data without taking out samples. One other way was for blockchain sharing of the data, where maybe there's some way to actually pay to get access. Finally, with digital twins, that's the other method. And naturally, for all of this to happen, we actually do need one important stakeholder, which is the regulatory need to be on board. So we have a HSA representative, and she told us she'll help us.
You're also partners.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have just one table left, table 2. Dylan, you're gonna go first? Yeah.
Well done.
Okay, hi. My name is Dylan from Easy Square. I'm here representing the collective wisdom of Table 2. So as a wise person from Table 2 said, we start with the end in mind. So in this area, we are looking at how can we develop AI that can in silico validate and tell you what are the processes to go through for the process design, the process development, and the scale up. So once you validate that in silico, you don't have to do all the experimental work. You just go straight to production. That's the vision. That's where we want to go at. And what's the significant impact? This will enable the cost savings, so you don't have to do all that experimental work in between. Resource efficiency enables you to hit your sustainability target. Sound good? Okay, so how do we get there? We believe one of the first areas or scientific and technical challenges where AI can address is how can it help with the scale up from lab into manufacturing. I think quite a few groups have pointed out this. There's a gap between lab scale, where there's quite a bit of data across a lot of publications, a lot of labs in literature, but at the plant scale or the manufacturing scale, data is quite more restricted. The second thing is how can the sustainability targets be embedded at the design phase. So you want a certain type of outputs and criteria at your manufacturing scale. How can you make sure that when you are doing the design of your process, those criteria are embedded inside? And lastly, how can the feedback of the market signals and demand from the market be fed back in an accelerated manner? Because now there's a bit of a lag time. The second thing that we covered is really leading off of that, and a lot of groups have alluded to this, is the lack of data. So data, there is something missing there in terms of the manufacturing data, but also pointed out by Saif, there's a lack of this transport data, because at the molecular level, there's is invariant chemical, physical data. But when you scale up, what actually changes is in the chemical engineering sense, the mass transport and how these things combine at scale. And that's really a missing gap. There were some ideas on how we can bridge this gap, for example, through physics or first principles modeling. There's also some commonalities, because although different processes have different materials and different types of processes that go into it, but many of these manufacturing scale things have common vendors that might have same kind of physical parameters, same kind of equipment, that you could have a template-based model that could then be open source and then farmed out to the different industry players. The third thing I want to touch on that was also brought up was about how to convince the industry stakeholders who are actually going to put this into practice to adopt these technologies, because they are as well should be risk averse, because this requires a lot of money, a lot of assets. And how can you combat this risk averseness with the mitigating factors to convince these industries to adopt? Last but not least, taking a step back, we also feel that one of the grand challenges the AI can play is actually in the decision-making process. What would be the best path forward? Given that once we identify, we can talk about all these things, but how can we get to scale? How can we have the feedback? How can we get adopted? But even deciding what would be the correct steps to take, which path we should take, is where we feel AI can come into play. So for example, there might be a transition in the types of feedstocks we'll use to either more carbon neutral or carbon negative feedstocks compared to the petrochemical incumbents we have today. We could look at how AI could bridge interdisciplinary fields. I think that's important because many experts only work in given fields, but AI could help bridge those gaps. I think that's also brought up earlier. For example, how can we look at the life cycle assessment and supply chain, because as it was brought up, scope 3 emissions are outside of factory are actually one of the big contributors. And this all flows into strategic decision making of how AI can bring forward this sustainable manufacturing agenda. So that wraps up, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dylan. So it's just me holding you back from lunch. So firstly, I just want to thank everybody for participating. This is a very important sort of activity because it truly complements the other activities in the Singapore ecosystem that are ongoing on the discovery side, right? So what are we going to do? So we have identified, actually, you can see in just this sharing, right, several common patterns emerging about perspectives on grand challenges, what those grand challenges could be, where is the data? That's been a big discussion, right? And what steps to take next. So what we'll be doing from now onwards is collating all this information. And as Kedar already pointed out, the output from this workshop has to be distilled into a written form, which will form part of a position paper that we will then use to make perhaps further decisions on how to invest in this area. So what I will be leaning on is collating all these inputs, but getting in touch with individual folks who have attended this workshop for further input. We will also be sharing likely drafts of what we will be putting together for your review and for further suggestions. And we hope that we can put together a compelling document that outlines the grand challenges for chemical and biological and perhaps materials manufacturing, right? So that not only can we do what we currently do better, but be ready for the absolutely new stuff that we aspire to do in Singapore, right? Make new molecules and materials. So let's be ready for that. This community will play a very big role. So I just wanted to thank everybody for making the time and staying here till the end, spending a whole half day here. The reward is lunch, which is waiting outside, and many more discussions. So please feel free to go and help yourself to lunch. Thank you very much once again, and we'll be in touch.
There's a questions. Will those joining online also be able to touch?
Yes, yes.
Maybe you can.
Yes. And for those joining online, you're definitely part of this initiative. We will be in touch. Thank you.